Hello, my amazing Algebra Half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. And we are on lesson 62 of our blue book, just clicking right along, and we're talking about proportions with fractions. So here we have a problem. Remember, a proportion is anytime we have a fraction set equal to another fraction. And now we have a fraction that is made up of fractions. So the method that we used before when we had a proportion was to cross multiply. We multiplied this way and then we multiply this way. And with fractions, it is no different. So we're just going to start out and we're going to cross multiply. So we take the 2/3 times the 1/3. So we will have 2/3 times 1/3. No, excuse me, 1/5. Can't read my own writing. 2/3 times 1/5. And then we're going to set that equal to 5/8 times x, or 5/8 times x. Okay, so that's a pretty easy first step. We multiply across and we set it equal to the other cross product. Now on the left, we have 2/15 because if you notice, nothing is going to cancel. On the right, we have 5/8. So we have an equal sign in between them, 5/8 times x. But we want x by itself. So how do we get x by itself? We get rid of the 5/8. How do we get rid of the 5/8? We multiply by the reciprocal of 5/8. So we're going to multiply by 8/5, but if we do that to the right-hand side, we'd sure better do that to the left-hand side. So 8/5. So we just multiplied both sides by the same thing, which is okay by our multiplication property of equality. So now, this side, the 5 cancels the 5 and the 8 cancels the 8, and we have an x. And then over here, we start looking for, is there anything that will cancel? Well, 5 won't cancel with either one of those. The 15 has a 3, and it won't cancel with either one of those, and a 5. So we're stuck. We just have to multiply it. 8 times 2 is 16. 5 times 15 is 75. And that is our simplified answer. 16/75 is x. Okay, so now if we replace the x by 16/75 and we cross multiply, it should give us the same thing on both sides. So when I multiply this by this, I'm going to be able to cancel. The 16 and the 8 will cancel because one's on the top and one's on the bottom. So that would be a 2. And then over here, we'd get a 2/15. When we multiplied those two together, we would get a 2/15. And then when we multiply these two together, we get a 2/15. So it is true. It is a true proportion now. Remember, a proportion can be a false proportion or a true proportion. Our job when we're solving for x is to make it a true proportion. And we did, because we plugged it back in and it worked. So let's come back with another example. Here is our second and last example, and then we'll work some practice problems. Okay, so we're going to multiply across, and we're going to get x times 2/5. So we'll just say 2/5 x. And then we're going to multiply this way, and we're going to set it equal to 1/3 times 3/4. Doesn't matter which one I put first, right? So now I can see that my 3 and my 3 are going to cancel. So I wind up with 2/5 x equals 1/4. So I need to find out what x is. So I need to get rid of the 2/5. So I will multiply by the reciprocal of 2/5, but I have to do it to both sides. So we will multiply by 5/2 and 5 over 2. And when I do that, this cancels to give me just the x. And I get x equals. And then nothing's going to cancel here, so I'm going to get 5 over 8. 5/8. Okay, so let's go back and see if we got it right. So I could cross multiply again, or I could just simplify each side and see if we get the same thing. So 5/8 divided by 3/4 is the same thing as 5/8 times 4/3. Because you remember, division by a fraction is the same as multiplication by its reciprocal. So when I do that, I can cancel the 8 and the 4 with a 2 and a 1, and I get 5/6. So this left-hand side equals 5/6. So we'll be in luck if this one also equals 5/6. So let's do the same thing over here. Let's take 1/3 divided by 2/5 is the same as 1/3 times the reciprocal, which is 5/2. When I multiply, don't I get 5/6 again? 5/6. So this side equals 5/6. Then I have the left side and the right side equaling 5/6. So my answer, 5/8, made it a true proportion, and therefore my answer is the solution. So now we're going to come back with some practices for you to do. Here's your first practice problem. So copy it down and then pause your video. I hope you did that. So now we're going to go across. 3/2 times x is 3/2 x equals, and then I multiply these two across, and I get 1 over 20, because 1/4 times 1/5 is 1 over 20. So now I need to solve by getting x by itself, so I will multiply by the reciprocal of 3/2, which is 2/3, and over here 2/3. So now this goes away. I get x equals, and now my 2 is going to cancel, isn't it? I've got a 2 and a 20, so I'm going to cancel the 2 with a 1 and the 20. I'm dividing it by 2 to get a 10, and then I get 1 over 30. That should be our answer, 1 over 30. So let's check it and see if 1 over 30 is correct. So we can check it by cross multiplying, or we can check it by simplifying the fractions as they are. Since we did cross multiplying last time, we'll do we did simplifying last time, we'll do cross multiplying this time. So when I multiply this times this, the 3 on the top and the 30 on the bottom will cancel. And I will get 1 over 20. I'm trying to do this in my head, because that ends up 3 over 60 is 1 over 20. So this crossway says 1 over 20. So now we're going to go this way, and we already know it says 1 over 20. So they are the same, and my answer is 1 over 30th, and it makes it a true proportion. Here we have practice B. So I want you to go ahead and copy it down and then pause your video. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to cross multiply. 1/6 times y equals, going this way, 2 over 15. So now, don't we need to get y by itself? So we will multiply by the reciprocal with 6 over 1 and 6 over 1 on this side. This cancels, and I get y equals nothing. Well, I've got a 3 in here and a 3 in here. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And I get 4/5. Y is 4/5. So now let's go back and see if y is 4/5 is the true solution. So let's go back here. And the last one we did with cross multiplying, so let's just simplify this one. 4/5 divided by 2/3 is 4/5 times the reciprocal, which is 3/2. Okay, so the 4 and the 2 will cancel with the 2 and a 1, and I get 6/5. So this whole thing right here is 6/5. So now we're going to go over here, and we're going to look over here at 1/5 divided by 1/6 is the same thing as 1/5 times the reciprocal, which is 6/1. And guess what I get? 6/5, 6/5. So my answer, 4/5, did make the proportion true. Did you get it right? I hope you did. This is practice problem C. So here's your X. Copy it down. And this is an equal sign. It looks a little funny, doesn't it? Okay, so pause your video. Okay, so now we can do this by cross multiplying. And when we do it, we're going to get 1/2 X equals 2 times 1/8 is 2/8, which is 1/4. Okay, so you might can tell what X is right now. Doesn't X have to be 1/2? Because 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. But we could multiply by 2 on this side and 2 on this side to get rid of our 2. And then we get 2/4, which is 1/2. So now let's go back and check it. Let's plug in a 1/2 right there. All right, we're going to check this one by just cross multiplying. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. 2/8 is 1/4. And we got it right. And the answer was X is 1/2. I hope you got it right. Here is our last practice. So I want you to make sure that you do this one by yourself. Do not let me do it for you. Just come back after you've done it because you need some practice. Okay, so hopefully you've already done it. Come over here, cross multiply, and we get 7/3 equals 1/5 times X. So to get the X by itself, we must get rid of the 1/5. So we multiply by 5/1. And over here by 5/1. And we end up with 35/3 is X. So we got our X, 35/3. So now we're going to check it. So now we're going to just simplify this time. So 1/3 divided by 35/3 is 1/3 times 3/35. So 1/3 times the reciprocal 3/35. Can you see that the 3's are going to cancel? And I'm going to be left with 1/35. So 1/35 on the left. And now 1/5 divided by 7 is the same as 1/5 times 1/7. And 1/5 times 1/7 is 1/35. And we have solved, and we have 35/3 is the correct solution. And we are out of examples. We have finished lesson 62. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.